Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Heisman Talk. I'm Nate Dogg with my co-host, Devonair D. Jackson. D, last week we talked about the SEC conference and our top three teams. Today, we're going to discuss the Big Ten. So let's jump right into it. D, this year the Big Ten is wide open with the departure of Justin Fields from Ohio State. Anyone can win it at this point. But D, who is your first team in the Big Ten this year?
My first team in the Big Ten this year is going to be Ohio State. I mean, nobody, so far has seemed to be able to knock these guys off. They're year in and year out. They're always, at the top of the conference. And I think this year will be the same. It's gonna be interesting to see who actually takes Justin Fields' place that he left. He went to the NFL draft, and so it's gonna be really, really interesting. I'm predicting that CJ Stroud will win the position, but we'll have to see. They have a very, very stout offensive line. They have a top offensive lineman in Paris Johnson, who anchors, that offensive line group. Their defense, they have, two very, very good defensive linemen in Haskell Garrett and Zach Harrison. And they'll be very, very tough to deal with. And, you have a linebacker in Terhada, I think he said Terhada Mitchell. He's a very dynamic, player. So, they have pieces, to once again be at the top of that conference. And I think that, I just don't see anybody, knocking them off of that place.
Yeah, and D, I'm going to have to agree with you this time. I have Ohio State as my number one team as well. And, we kind of discussed the departure of Justin Fields and what a major impact he had at that program. And really the high level of anticipation for the next guy to come in, whether it be CJ Stroud or Jack Miller, who's also right there in the competition. We don't know exactly who's going to be starting this fall, but Ryan Day will definitely have that offense booming this year. Defensively, like you said, they're pretty stout as well. The real main key to Ohio State's success is, can they continue to build upon what they have done in the past 3 years? And that's the big question mark, and only time will tell. They're going to be tested early. I think they play Minnesota week 1. So we'll get into the schedule later. But definitely Ohio State is the front runner for the Big Ten this year. Who is your number 2 team in the Big Ten this year?
My number 2 team is Wisconsin. And, a lot of times, I kind of think that they're pretenders a lot of the time. They have a good record, but then they end up kind of flopping in the Big Ten championship or something like that happens, But, this year I really like their team, man. I'm a big fan of Graham Mertz at quarterback. I think, him having that full off season and being able to develop, with the receivers and the offensive coordinator, I'm really, really excited to see where Wisconsin takes this offense. They never really had a quarterback like Graham Mertz, I don't think. That's as dynamic as he is. And so I'm really, really interested to see, where that offensive, staff can take, Wisconsin's offense. They need to find a running back, because in their system in the past, they've been a run first team, pound the ball. I'm interested to see if they'll change that with the quarterback like Graham Mertz. Defensively, they were pretty good defense last year. They gave up 17, points per game on the season last year. So they were pretty good. They have, 8 starters coming back. So, they have all the pieces, and, I think that they should, once again, be in the Big Ten championship, and they've been there a lot of times in the past. So I think they'll be back.
And D, I'm going to have to agree with you again. I have the Wisconsin Badgers as my number 2 team, especially with Graham Mertz playing quarterback. Like you said, we're so used to seeing Wisconsin as a run-heavy, stack 2 tight ends kind of team with a pocket passer that throws occasionally on a play action, right? But it'll be interesting to see this year if they depend on a dual threat kind of guy and really revolve their offense around him. And another thing is their defense is going to be probably the best they've had in a while, especially with veteran linebackers Jack Sanborn and Leo Chanel returning. That's going to play a key role too, because against Ohio State's run, against Michigan's run, you're going to need those guys to step up when it matters most. One of the biggest things that I'd like to say is Wisconsin's going to get their chance early in the season as they play Penn State and Notre Dame in their first month of the 2021 season. So, D, we're going to see right off the bat what this team is capable of doing.
Yeah, man, that's a tough slate to begin the season. Those are two very, very tough programs. So that'll be interesting to see how they come out and play in those two games.
Absolutely, and I think right now the favorites are probably Ohio State and Wisconsin to play in the Big Ten Championship. But D, we haven't even started one snap yet. We haven't had one kickoff yet. So anything can change. And with that being said, I think these number 3 teams that we've chosen could play a huge factor as well. D, who is your number 3 team in the Big Ten this year?
My number 3 team, I chose Indiana. They had a breakout season last year. And, with their quarterback coming back, he's coming off injury, Michael Penix. He's coming off injury, but I think he's a very, very good quarterback. I think, he's a lefty that can, that throws a really tight spiral. He's a capable runner. I really like, their offense. I like their team. I like for them to come back and have a successful season this year. It was tough not picking Penn State, obviously, but I really think that Michael, it really depends on the health of Michael Penix Jr. That's what their season is going to depend on. But they also have 9 starters returning on defense, and they only gave up 20 points a game last year. So they have a lot of positives going for them. They're going to have to force a lot of turnovers like they did last year. But I think that we're having Michael Penix coming back, and hopefully he doesn't get hurt and he stays healthy. I think that they have an opportunity to be a very good team in the Big Ten. That's why I picked him as my number 3 team.
And that's a great pick, D. Indiana is one of those wild card teams in the Big Ten that we really don't know much about. Last year, like you said, they had a great year. They beat Penn State in overtime, and things were really rolling for the Hoosiers. But D, it'll be interesting to see how they play under pressure with big crowds back this year. If they do, play against teams like Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, how are they going to fare, right? Even someone like Michigan State, how are they going to do with the atmosphere surrounding them? And secondly, what is their defense going to be like? Because last year we saw a defense that was more surprising than anyone, I think, in the country. So, D, that's a great pick. We'll have to look out for the Hoosiers this year. For me, it was a tough choice. I mean, I could have gone with 3 or 4 teams. I had Penn State. I had the Iowa Hawkeyes, who I think are right there in contention to have a great season as well. Then you talk about Michigan with Jim Harbaugh being under pressure and what could be his final year. But D, I'm gonna roll the dice on this one. I'm gonna go with the Minnesota Gophers. But that's right, the PJ Fleck and the Minnesota Gophers. And D, a lot of people forget this team won 11 games 2 years ago before COVID. And to me, this is the revenge tour for PJ Fleck. Now, keep in mind, they return most of their starters, including quarterback Tanner Morgan, who was a part of that team 2 years ago and leading his team to 11 games. Also, they return a big defensive starter, 7th-year senior. That's right, 7th-year senior due to COVID redshirting. 7th-year seventh-year senior Micah Treadway, who's going to lead that defensive line to victory. So, D, in my opinion, Minnesota could shake up some things this year in the Big Ten.
Yeah, man. PJ Fleck, roll the boat. PJ
Right.
Fleck. PJ Fleck's a great coach. I think he's a great motivator, and he's a good strategist too. He's been very, very successful. He didn't have a great season last year, but you can say COVID and everything, but like you said, it'll be interesting to see, because the year before he had 11 wins, so it'd be interesting to see how he motivates his guys this year, and how they come out and play. They have an experienced quarterback, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do as well. It was kind of tough, choosing between Minnesota and Indiana and Penn State. Those are three programs that I think are definitely on the come up, and so it'll be really, really interesting to see if a team can emerge and take over a spot that Penn State is kind of being predicted really to be in. Everybody really thinks Penn State is going to be there. So will Indiana or will Minnesota be able to overcome the history of Penn State? But history goes out the window when you step on the field. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and D, with that being said, we talk about all these teams being right there. I'm going to make the bold prediction that this could be the year that the Big Ten Conference itself knocks itself out of the playoffs, meaning, a team like Penn State or Michigan could beat Ohio State, and then Iowa could beat Penn State. So it's one of those years where a lot of dominoes could fall in place where the Big Ten doesn't even get in. But D, we'll discuss that later. We'll leave you hanging on that one. That's a wrap for today. When we come back next time, we're going to saddle up on our horses and head out west to discuss the Big 12 Conference. Until then, make sure to subscribe down below. Give this video a big thumbs up. Make sure your bell notification is turned on so you can get notified when we post a new video. And as always, this is Nate Dogg and D signing off.